There is a tree that grows in desert sand where no other food-producing plant can survive. It requires no water beyond natural rainfall, no soil preparation, no fertilizer. It produces fruit for 200 years from a single planting. The oil pressed from that fruit is more stable than butter, more heat-resistant than olive oil, and richer in vitamin E than any commercially sold cooking fat. It does not go rancid at room temperature for years. Berber women in southern Morocco have pressed it by hand since before written records exist. The $800 billion industrial seed oil market, which sells you refined vegetable oil that oxidizes in 3 months, classified this tree's oil as a luxury cosmetic product. It costs $40 for a small bottle of the beauty version. The edible version remains absent from supermarket shelves in most of the world. Not because the oil is scarce. The argan forest of southern Morocco covers 25 million acres. Not because production is impossible. Berber women have produced it by hand in sufficient quantities to feed entire communities for 3,000 years. Not because it tastes wrong. Moroccan families have cooked with it daily for longer than any industrial seed oil has existed. Because a cooking oil that does not go rancid does not require refrigeration, does not require chemical processing, and does not need replacing every 3 months, is not a cooking oil that generates $800 billion per year in repeat purchases. Subscribe to DTD Stories. Hit the bell. The next story opens soon. The archive opens in the Soussmassa region of southwestern Morocco, a semi-desert landscape where summer temperatures reach 50 degrees Celsius and rainfall averages less than 200 millimeters per year. In this environment, where conventional agriculture fails completely, the Argania spinosa grows. It has been growing here for at least 80 million years. The fossil record documents it. The argan tree is one of the oldest surviving tree species on Earth. It predates the Atlas Mountains that now border its range. It survived ice ages, tectonic shifts, and climate changes that eliminated thousands of other species. It survives because its root system descends 30 meters into the earth to reach water that surface drought cannot touch. Berber women of the Amazigh people have harvested argan fruit for at least 3,000 years. The traditional harvest method has been documented by traders, explorers, and colonial administrators across centuries. The fruit falls from the tree, the women collect it, the outer flesh is removed and fed to goats and camels. The hard nut inside is cracked by hand between 2 stones, a skill that takes years to develop because the nut requires precisely calibrated pressure to crack, without destroying the kernel inside. From each nut come 1 to 3 small kernels. The kernels are cold-pressed between stones to extract the oil. To produce 1 liter of argan oil by traditional hand pressing requires between 15 and 20 hours of skilled labor. The Amazigh women who developed this process did not do it because they had nothing else to do. They did it because the oil the process produced was worth the labor. It cooked without burning. It stored without spoiling. It kept the fat-soluble nutrients that their diet depended on through seasons when other food sources were scarce. The desert produces the tree. The tree produces the fruit. The fruit produces the oil. The oil feeds the community. For 3,000 years, this chain required no factory, no chemical plant, no supply chain, and no purchase from an industry that did not exist yet. The Amazigh women who developed the argan oil extraction process were not producing a luxury product. They were solving a survival problem. In a desert environment with seasonal food scarcity, a stable fat source that does not require refrigeration and does not spoil is not a nicety. It is a strategic food reserve. The women who spent 15 hours pressing 1 liter of oil were not doing artisanal crafting. They were doing food security work that kept their communities fed through the hot, dry months when other food sources failed. Medieval Arab travelers documented argan oil in accounts of North African trade. The 14th century explorer Ibn Battuta referenced it in his writings. Portuguese explorers who reached Morocco in the 15th century recorded the oil in trade documents. Every external account describes the same thing: a golden oil pressed by women from the nuts of a desert tree used for cooking, used medicinally, worth traveling for. The external observers who documented it understood its value because they compared it to what they had at home. Olive oil went rancid on long sea voyages. Animal fats required cold storage. The oil from the desert tree that stayed stable through heat and time was remarkable to anyone who had experienced the alternative. These observations went into trading records. They did not go into European food markets. The trade routes that moved spices from Asia and gold from West Africa did not develop a channel for argan oil. Morocco kept it. The world outside Morocco spent the next 500 years eating less stable alternatives without knowing a better option existed in the desert to the south. Here is the chemistry. Simple enough, the cooking oils in your kitchen are primarily chains of fatty acid molecules. The stability of those chains determines how quickly the oil oxidizes, which is the chemical process that produces the rancid smell and harmful compounds that form when cooking oils degrade. Shorter, more reactive fatty acid chains oxidize faster. Longer, more saturated chains oxidize more slowly. The vitamin E content of an oil further protects against oxidation by neutralizing the free radicals that cause it. Argan oil contains 62% oleic acid, the same primary fatty acid in olive oil, which is why olive oil has better shelf stability than most seed oils. It contains 25% linoleic acid, which provides essential omega-6 fatty acids, and it contains 620 milligrams of vitamin E per kilogram of oil. Compare this to olive oil at 150 milligrams. Compare this to sunflower oil at 60 milligrams. Compare this to canola oil at 20 milligrams. 620 milligrams of vitamin E per kilogram acts as a biological preservative inside the oil itself. The antioxidants neutralize oxidation before it can progress. The oil stays stable at room temperature for 2 to 3 years without any chemical preservative, without refrigeration, without the modified atmosphere packaging that the seed oil industry uses to slow the degradation. Of oils that would otherwise become rancid within weeks of pressing, your canola oil has a shelf life printed on the bottle. The date exists because without it, you would know the oil had gone bad before you used it. The chemical that prevents the smell from being obvious sooner is added at the factory. Argan oil does not require that chemical. The vitamin E concentration prevents the oxidation that requires the chemical. This is the competition that the $800 billion industry cannot afford to acknowledge. Now the money and the specific mechanism by which a superior product gets absorbed into irrelevance. The transition did not happen because consumers chose hair serums over cooking oil. It happened because of how products enter markets. A new ingredient reaching Western consumers in the 1990s and early 2000s needed a distribution channel. The food distribution channel for cooking oils was controlled by Cargill, Unilever, Bunge, ADM, and Wilmar. These 5 companies control the majority of global cooking oil distribution. Getting a new oil onto supermarket shelves requires their cooperation or extraordinary marketing. Resources to bypass them, the cosmetic industry distribution channel was more accessible. Specialty beauty retailers, independent importers, and direct-to-consumer marketing were viable routes for a premium ingredient with a compelling story. Argan oil had the story. Desert origins, ancient tradition, exotic geography. The beauty industry narrative machine turned these facts into a product that launched Moroccan oil in 2008 and built a category worth hundreds of millions within a decade. Once the cosmetic price point was established, at $40 for a small bottle, the food market entry became economically awkward. Consumers who understood argan oil understood it as a luxury cosmetic. The cooking oil context required a complete repositioning against an established perception. The seed oil companies never needed to do anything. The market dynamics of the beauty industry did the work for them. Now, the money. Cargill. Annual revenue of $160 billion. Primary product lines include refined soybean oil, corn oil, and canola oil. Their oils are extracted using hexane, a petroleum-derived chemical solvent. After hexane extraction, the crude oil is refined using alkali solutions to remove free fatty acids, bleached using activated clay to remove color compounds, and deodorized using high-temperature steam stripping to remove the smell of the chemical processing. After this treatment, the oil is nutritionally diminished, chemically altered, and still goes rancid within 3 to 6 months of the bottle being opened. Unilever, the company that sells Flora, Bessel, and I can't believe it's not butter. Annual revenue exceeding $50 billion from spreads and cooking fats alone. They sell refined seed oil in margarine form, chemically hydrogenated to achieve solid texture at room temperature. The hydrogenation process that creates their product was linked to cardiovascular disease by researchers in the 1990s. Unilever disputed the research for a decade before reformulating their products. The reformulated products still use refined seed oils. They still oxidize? Both companies are aware that argan oil exists. Both companies know that its vitamin E content gives it stability their products cannot match. Both companies know that a desert tree that produces a superior cooking fat without any of their processing. Infrastructure represents a threat to the product category they dominate. Their solution was elegant. They did not fight argan oil. They absorbed it into a category where it could not compete with their food business. The cosmetics category. In 2008, a hair care brand called Moroccan launched in North America. Their primary product was a hair treatment serum based on argan oil. The marketing positioned argan oil as liquid gold from the exotic desert of Morocco. A luxury beauty ingredient, the product line generated over $100 million in its first years of operation. L'Oreal, Unilever, and every major cosmetic company launched their own argan oil beauty product lines within 5 years. The ingredient that had fed Berber families for 3,000 years became a premium hair serum ingredient, sold at $40 per small bottle. The reclassification worked perfectly. The global narrative around argan oil shifted from its food properties to its cosmetic properties. Food journalists who wrote about it wrote about beauty uses. Importers who brought it to Western markets priced it as a cosmetic ingredient. The price point established by the cosmetic category made food use economically absurd to consumers who now associated the oil with $40 hair serums rather than cooking. The seed oil industry did not need to lobby against argan oil entering the food market. The cosmetic industry absorbed it first. The result was the same. The most vitamin-E troxidatively stable cooking oil available remained outside the cooking oil category, and the $800 billion seed oil market continued selling hexane-extracted, chemically refined, rapidly oxidizing vegetable oils to every kitchen in the developed world. Meanwhile, in Morocco, the argan forest faces pressure. The 25 million acre range has contracted by 50% in the last century due to agricultural expansion, overgrazing, and climate change. The Argania spinosa is listed as a vulnerable species by the International Union for Conservation of Nature. A tree that has survived 80 million years of geological and climatic change is being eliminated in decades. The UNESCO Biosphere Reserve designation of 1998 provides some protection. It does not stop the pressure. The irony is not subtle. The oil that could feed populations in arid regions where conventional agriculture fails is being pressed into hair serums for affluent consumers in humid climates that have no shortage of food. The tree that could provide a sustainable oil source without irrigation, without chemical inputs, without industrial infrastructure is being cut for firewood and agricultural land, while Unilever and Cargill press chemically extracted soybean oil in industrial facilities, burning fossil fuels. Here is how to find and use edible argan oil. Not the cosmetic version. The edible version is available from Moroccan specialty importers, Middle Eastern grocery stores, and online retailers. It is labeled as culinary argan oil or food-grade argan oil. The flavor of roasted kernel argan oil is nutty and distinctive, similar to sesame oil, but lighter. It is traditionally used as a finishing oil drizzled over couscous, mixed into amlou, paste with almonds and honey, or used as a bread dipping oil. For cooking, unroasted argan oil has a smoke point of approximately 215 degrees Celsius, higher than butter and suitable for medium heat cooking. Roasted argan oil has a lower smoke point due to the heat treatment of the kernels and is better used as a finishing oil rather than for high-temperature cooking. Store edible argan oil in a dark glass bottle away from direct light. The vitamin E content means it does not require refrigeration in a cool pantry. Refrigeration will not harm it, but is not necessary. A well-stored bottle of high-quality edible argan oil will remain stable for 2 to 3 years. Your canola oil will not. The price of edible argan oil is higher than the seed oils it outperforms. This is partly because the nut-cracking process remains labor-intensive despite mechanization efforts, partly because production is geographically limited to a single threatened forest in southwestern Morocco, and partly because 40 years of cosmetic category positioning has established a price, expectation that the food market inherited without questioning. You are partly paying for the narrative that was built to keep it out of the cooking oil aisle. The traditional Amazigh knowledge of argan oil production was inscribed on the UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage List in 2014. Culturally preserved, commercially sidelined, UNESCO inscription ensured the knowledge would be documented, It did not ensure the product would reach supermarket cooking oil aisles in Paris or New York. The cultural category is safe. The food market category remains controlled by companies that never needed to fight entry because the cosmetic industry created the barrier for them. Argania spinosa, 80 million years in the ground, 200 years of fruit production from a single tree, 620 milligrams of vitamin E per kilogram, 2 to 3 years of shelf stability at room temperature, 15 to 20 hours of skilled labor per liter. 3,000 years of daily use by people who built their diet around what the desert gave them. The $800 billion industry gave you hexane-extracted, alkali-refined, bleached, deodorized soybean oil in a plastic bottle with a 4-month shelf life and a price that seems reasonable because nothing is being compared honestly. The IUCN vulnerability classification for Argania spinosa did not generate the kind of international conservation response that charismatic mammals receive. No viral campaigns, no documentary series. The tree that has survived 80 million years is losing ground quietly, 1 hectare at a time, to agricultural expansion and fuel wood collection. The UNESCO Biosphere Reserve protects approximately 2.7 million hectares of the original range. The rest is unprotected. The tree that produces the most oxidatively stable food oil on Earth is being eliminated in the region. That is its only natural habitat, while the world uses chemically processed alternatives from industrially farmed crops. There are Amazigh women's cooperatives in the Susmasa region that produce certified organics cold-pressed edible argan oil for international markets. Buying from these cooperatives supports both the women who maintain the traditional production knowledge and the conservation of the forest. The economic case for protecting the argan forest is strongest when the forest generates income for the communities living within it. The comparison is not complicated. The oil that does not go rancid has been available since before records were kept. The one that does go rancid generates $800 billion per year. The difference between those two products is chemistry. The difference between their market positions is 40 years of narrative control and a very convenient reclassification as something you put in your hair. Subscribe to and hit the bell. The next story opens soon.